Hi everyone, welcome to the Animal Experience. My name is Coryelle Kramer. I am a metaphysical expert for people and animals, and I'm here today. Hi Adele. So I want to thank everybody for joining. I'm here today to talk about a subject that is challenging at best, heart-wrenching at worst, but always, I believe, a beautiful experience in the end. And I'll explain more. Hi, Rhonda. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I really, really appreciate you. Excuse me, the response I've been getting for this little endeavor that I've been doing has been pretty awesome. So I want to thank you all for giving me your thoughts, letting me know what this is doing for you, this little endeavor, my little TV show or Facebook show or a live stream show or whatever the heck you want to call this. And also, thank you for giving me your information on topics, your insights on and thoughts on things. I posted yesterday on my Facebook page about event invites. I wasn't quite sure about how those roll and how do people feel about them, and because I don't like to be I'm not pushy. I'm here if you want me, and I like to share my experience if you'd like to hear it, but I'm not going to shove myself down anybody's throat. That's not what I'm all about. That's not the way I roll. So thank you for letting me know that the invites are not as annoying as I was afraid that they were. So everybody for joining, thank you very much. Again, this is the Animal Experience. This is episode 3, and we are going to be talking about a subject that always happens, but that's not always easy to talk about. And I get it. I understand. And I know I don't even know how many end of life sessions I've done with animals, every kind of animal. And I get it. It's not easy, and it's challenging, but you know something? I'm going to try to give you the insight from the animal's perspective that I've found over the years. Thank you. Hey, Gigi. My friend Gigi joined. That's great. So I'm going to try to give you from my own perspective, from what I've learned. So last week I talked about reincarnation. That was pretty cool. But what I want to say is this. These shows are all on subjects that I've learned personally from my communications over the decades with talking with animals. Please remember that not all animal communicators are the same. So their experience may not be like mine, and my experience may not be like theirs. So they might be having it coming from a different angle, a different perspective. But we're all here trying to do the good work of trying to help you understand your animals more. And also try to help you all get, if it's possible, closer to your animal in an understanding like never before. So that's our goal. If we're a good animal communicator, that's our goal. So let's get on with it. So the first part that I want to talk about is death or transitioning. A lot of people will hear me say in a session, or when I'm talking about death, they ask me, I'll say the word transition or transitioning. What's the diff? What's the difference between these two? Well, this word I learned from the animals. Okay, they gave me this word because actually a goat gave me this word. A goat I was talking to at this place I'd mentioned last week. It was called Spring Farm, and it was a beautiful place. It's still there. They just don't do animal communication anymore, but it's a great place in upstate New York. And they do really wonderful work. So if you want to go, you could go to springfromcares.org. I believe that's their website. Anyway, I was talking to a goat and I was saying, how do you all feel about dying? And he said, well, first off, you got to stop using that word. And I said, why? And he said, because that word has got a lot of fear around it. And the word has become something that makes you think that there's nothing beyond. I kind of like that. So I said, okay, so what word should I use? He said transition. Transitioning or transition. So I said, why? And he said, because it denotes the feeling that things go beyond this life, this form, this body. And they do. There is no such thing as death. It's a word that is fictional. It doesn't mean anything. And there is no such thing as death. The way animals see it is kind of like, okay, I'm dating myself, but kind of. It's kind of like the TV that you had to get up out of the chair or the couch to go turn the knob. All right. So it's kind of like turning a knob to another vibrational setting. Okay. So he wanted me to know that transitioning is the word to use because it has so much more of a powerful meaning to it. It means that there's movement. The soul is never ending. It's energy. It's never ending. So it's always there. It's always there. So Sandra, I just want to read what Sandra said. She said, my Missy girl passed on the 2nd. My heart is broken. I know. And I hope that this kind of helps you a little bit with that. I get it. You know, there are animals that give us love, they give us devotion, and then they up and die on us. And it's hard. I get it. All right. I know. So I hope this episode is here to kind of like to help you guys a little bit with that. So that's the difference between death and transitioning. I hope I've explained that enough. It's a very important word to use because death makes you feel, when you say death, okay, it makes you feel awful, or it usually does, because it makes you feel like you've hit a brick wall. That's it. That's all you get. That's all anybody gets. And your animal's going to go away and never, ever, come back, or the soul just go poof and it's gone. So that's why I like to use the word transitioning. Okay. Now, do animals... So hang on one second. What I really want to go into is, do animals fear it like we do? It depends. But the process itself, generally, no. I've spoken to a lot of animals, both domesticated and wild. And because they see it as a transitioning, as really just a moving from one place to another, they simplify it, not because they're simple, but because they're just zen about it. So they're very relaxed about it. And the way they see it is they simply see it as a release. It's a change of vibration from the physical plane to what I call the non-physical plane. And I love that I'm looking at this feed right now, and I'm seeing that everybody's supporting each other. When Adele is supporting Sandra because she mentioned that she lost her beloved animal, Missy. And, that's beautiful. And I love that. And I think you guys are all amazing. Serena, my arrow, expelled his last breath in my arms as I was picking him up to take him to the vet. Yeah. Animals will do that. I'll talk more about that in the later episode, but that's a beautiful way. I've had some of my animals die or transition, with me. without having to take them to the vet, and it's a really beautiful experience. Rhonda says, I don't think my Angus feared to transition. He feared leaving me. That's another thing I'm talking about. Okay, so let's move on. So animals, the non-physical is what I call heaven. Nirvana, source, Jimmy, whatever the heck you want to call it. It's to me, it's the non-physical plane. So the non-physical plane is what they see. They just see it as a vibrational movement from the physical to the non-physical. Okay. So how do domesticated animals see transitioning? Do they see it the same as wild animals? Very interesting. There is a difference when you communicate, and I'll talk about this in another episode in a few weeks. But when I talk about excuse me, when I talk about talking to a domesticated animal versus talking to a wild animal. So what I'll do is you get different communications. They're different because they're not domesticated, and the domesticated are not wild. So there is a difference between communication and also their outlook on things. But what I wanted to say is, in general, for both of them, wild animals don't usually have the difference between the way the wild animals see transitioning and the way domesticated animals do is the domesticated animals are emotionally attached to you. So that brings up a whole new ball of wax. The wild animals don't have, the ones in the wild don't have, not the wild animals in domestication, there's a difference, they don't have the emotional attachments. So they're a little bit more freer, without meaning that you're holding them back at all. So please don't think that, okay? So I'll expand on that a little bit more in a little bit, but it's very interesting. So the next thing I want to talk about is, why do some need help to transition and others don't? And so I want to explain the process. You have to understand the process of transitioning is huge. What I mean by that is, when I connect to an animal that's close to transitioning, their energy is like, and if they're able to transition without help, I'm also feeling the energy of the transitioning that's about to happen. So it's akin to connecting to a nuclear energetic blast or a rocket taking off. If you've ever seen a rocket at Cape Canaveral and it goes and it takes like 10 seconds for it to get off even the landing pad, you know, you're welcome, Sandra. I'm glad this is helping you. So that's what it is when you connect to some being, whether it's a person or whether it's an animal, and you're psychically connected to them. That's what I'm picking up. I'm picking up empathically the energy that they're expanding to try to transition. Some animals, by the time they get to that point, or they can't get to their time of transitioning, it's exhausting. They don't have the extra oomph to make that blast off. So they need help, and they need someone to help them across to the other side. Whether that is you just touching them, like what happened with the person who was talking about before, how they just, I think it was Sandra, who was just she had her arms around her animal and picking them up to take them to the vet, and that was enough to help him transition. So what's interesting is that was happening because she was giving her energy to a certain extent without knowing it. I think she was giving her energy to him so he could take off and blast off back to non-physical. So some need help, and some need help from us with just our presence and our love and our compassion and our sometimes they just really need to hear us say to them, it's okay. You can go. I love you. I know that love is everlasting. And it's okay to go. Sometimes they just need to hear that. Woo! I think I'm picking up on all y'all emotion. I'm getting emotional. Woo. Okay, this is not cool. I mean, it's cool, but but it's like a crying mess on Facebook is not cool. Okay, so why do hey Adele, she's becoming overwhelmed. See? There you go. So animals, why? So they need help. Sometimes they need us. Sometimes they need to hear us say it's okay. Sometimes they need a vet visit. They need to be helped over the side, over to the other side. So it's okay, you know. Some need that loving helping hand over to the other side. However that loving helping hand is, who cares? And you'll know it because it'll feel like I understand if you can get away from the emotional. I know it's a doozy. I'm asking a lot. But if you can try to just get into your intuition and just get into that knowing and say, or just do a little prayer beforehand and just say, you know something? God, angels, divine, goddess, Harry, Buddha, Frank, I don't care. Just give me the strength to know what's the right thing to do. Just help me hear my inner voice during this time. You know, and it'll work. So animals in the wild have no choice. The difference between the domesticated and the wild animals is usually animals in the wild have no choice because they're wild and they don't have the emotional attachments. So how do they transition? What happens with them? Well, it's interesting. So this is all interesting, but they usually have more energy because they don't have the emotional attachments. They're not worried for us. They're not concerned about how we're going to get through this. They're not, thinking about that. They're able to laser focus on, I need to do this. And they go off and do it by themselves. Or sometimes they ask another animal to take them out. Like a deer letting go when a lion is chasing her, or an antelope or an impala or whatever. Okay? Or sometimes they ask us without us knowing it. And they step into traffic just as we're driving by. Yeah, I know. That's interesting, huh? So sometimes the wild animals need our help and we're there for them. So we shouldn't, when it happens like that, I got to say a lot of the times it's an animal's time to transition. If it wasn't the animal's time to transition, they wouldn't transition. It's really that simple. Okay? So try to get out of that. So, ooh, a lot of people are joining. This is great. So I hope that explains that. And then what I want to say is, do they know their time is coming, and they feel their people's or their person's sadness? Many times they do when they do know when their time is coming, and sometimes not. Sometimes it's a surprise to them. Sometimes it's a crapshoot. But many times animals are so connected to it and they have no fear of transitioning, like we do, that they have no problem just saying, you know something, boom, I'm good. I know when I'm going to go and I'm good with it. Now, here's the interesting sense. When I connect to an animal and I talk to them, a lot of the times, and I will get a sense for how close they are. And it's akin, my mind works sometimes like a Warner Brothers cartoon. It's very interesting. So it's akin to what I call packing for a big trip. There are different stages of when you pack for a big trip. There's first just, looking around, not even thinking more. The first step is really not even looking. All right. Those are usually animals that life force is very strong. They're not going anywhere. They're all good. They're going through life. They're not even thinking about going back home to non-physical. Then you have the ones who are like, let's see. You're just trying to pick out your trip. Where am I going to go? Look at interesting places. Just looking into it. All right. But not really doing anything. That's usually middle of life. Then a little later on in life, you have the animals that are kind of sort of looking in the closet, but not packing anything. They're just, what am I going to take? What do I need when I go to Hawaii? I need my Bermuda shorts. I need, I need my Hawaiian shirts. You get it. And then there's the process. The closer they get, then they get into the packing stage where they are packing, but they're not really into it in that they're just selecting stuff and putting it into the suitcases, but they're not really invested in what they have. So they're kind of hemming and hawing, going back and forth. Then there are the ones that are really and truly packing, but they haven't made it to the door yet. Then I go into the next stage. Then the next stage is they have packed their bags, and their bags are by the door. But again, they're not quite ready because they don't have their hat and coat on. I know, I told you, Warner Brothers cartoon. It's wild. Anyway, so then they have the last stage, and the last stage is they have their hat on, they have their coat on, they have this feeling of completion, they have this feeling of job well done, and they have their hand on the door, they have their suitcase in their hand, they're ready to go. So those are the different stages that I get when I connect, and it kind of like clears it away for me, because my job is to stay, even though I love your animals and I love you guys, my job is to stay as neutral as I possibly can, because if I get emotional, we're in trouble. I'm not getting stuff. I'm going to be plugged up, clogged up. So I try to stay as clear as I possibly can. Let me just see a couple of things some people are writing. Sandra Gardner says, it happened so fast, I wasn't home. It was like Friday she was fine, and then when she went home on Monday, she was very, very sick. It can happen really, really fast. It can happen so crazy fast. It doesn't necessarily, and animals are not invested too much. I mean, they love you and they care about you, but they're also not invested in being a martyr too much. All right? They're not invested in, I need to, I'll work as much as I can through this, but if it's my time, I'm gone. Bye-bye. I love you, but I gotta go. So, okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is, we died. Now what? What happens? And again, I want to state, this is my experience. Okay? This is my experience. So hang on, Sandra's asking me a question. Excuse me. Do you think she would wait until I was gone to let go? Some animals do. Some animals, and thank you for mentioning this, Sandra, some animals, because I can't remember everything about the subject, there's a lot. Some animals need to go when we're not around, because we are emotionally tying them down to their launch pad, and they need to go. So sometimes a lot of the animals have to do it when we're not around. Please don't take it personally. It's still for them a huge act of love. It's still for them a huge, important thing. It's not to say that they don't love you, don't care about you. It's not to say that you did anything wrong, that you should have canceled your trip, that you shoulda. Don't shit on yourself, please. It's about really and truly saying to yourself, you know something? If I should have been there, I would have been there. I know it hurts that you weren't there for them, They don't think that you're not there for them. They know, they see. I promise. Okay? Fatima says, will they give you, not the owner, an idea of how long they have with us? Yes, they do, but it's an emotional situation, so you're probably not hearing it. So that's why I come in. That's where I come in, because I'm neutral. So, okay, I got to move on, because I love this, but we can't be doing this all day long. It's already half an hour in, so here we go. All right, so you die, we die, they die. Now what? What happens? Again, I want to stress, this is my personal experience. I have not had a near-death experience, and it might be different from somebody else who has. All right? This is my experience. My experience happened when my mother died in 2008. Very few, like a week or so later, I was back home in Germany, or back at my house in Germany. And thanks for all the love, guys. Okay, I was back at my home in Germany, and I was asleep. And I had this, and suddenly I was in this other place. To make a very, very long story short, it was very tactile. The most tactile dream that I've ever had. So I don't call it a dream. I call it a visitation. I was there. I could touch, I could smell, I could hear, I could taste the air, I could see colors, I could feel textures, the whole 9 yards. And I knew immediately I was back in non-physical. And there was this amazing experience, to make a very long story short, where as I was going through this Lido deck of this cruise ship, which is where I was, it was this beautiful cruise ship that was floating in the clouds. Anyway, I got to this point where there was this wall of doors. And the wall of doors were every shape, every size. It was incredible. Kim says, I saw her V sitting in a bright light. It was so quick. This was the day after he passed. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful experience. So the wall of doors, and then as I was looking at the wall of doors, one of them opened, a man comes through, and immediately, as soon as he walked through the door, it was like he just downloaded just all of a sudden, it's like this wash came over him of relief, and just, I knew instantly what was happening. He was just downloading and just releasing everything from that life. And as he was releasing it into non-physical, and non-physical became more from his experience. And I also knew that he was somebody I wouldn't have liked, but he was still in non-physical. And his experience meant something to non-physical. It grew because of it. Heaven can't grow on its own. Okay? It's stagnant. There's a glass ceiling for heaven. Okay? I know it sounds crazy, but it's true if you think about it. It makes sense. Heaven, what happens with heaven is that if we don't come down here for the experience, heaven doesn't grow. It just keeps going and going and going, and it's like churning the same water. After a while, you're not going to want to drink that water. That is some nasty water because it's not growing. We are the souls that come down here, animal, vegetable, mineral, are the souls that come down here, are the souls that make heaven more. That's the whole point to coming down here, so we can experience and make heaven more. Pretty cool. So that's what happens. The animals walk through the door. The people walk through the door, and they download their experience. This was my experience. This is what I saw. Again, my own personal experience. It could be different for somebody else, but it was pretty intense. And I'm actually going to post about it on my website because the whole thing you really need to read. It was really, really incredible. And I wrote down that night I woke up and I wrote down exactly what I saw, because as I came back, I realized I was given the gift of being able to remember everything that happened. So that's what happens. My experience. And it's a beautiful process. There's nothing scary about it. There's no hell. I'm sorry, there isn't. There is kind of like a spirit limbo. or a spirit rehab where they go. But there's no hell. I'm sorry, there isn't. Except, at least my experience. Again, my experience. So, rounding it up, what do I want to say? Do animals and people go to the same place? Yes. Hell yes. I've had some people who tell me that's crazy. There's different heavens. There's different, and what I say to them is, remember this is soul, source. This is divine. This is heaven. This is nirvana. There's no limits. It's limited light and love. And what kind of a place would it be if our fur kids or the wild animals and their souls weren't there? It'd be pretty whack. I'm sorry, it would suck. All right? A soul is a soul is a soul. That's my experience. When I touch on an animal's soul, just like when I touch on a person's soul, I don't feel any different. There's light. It's touching on pure divine light and love. There you go. So that's my experience. So there is no difference. So look, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this gave you hope. I hope that this gave you a better understanding. I hope that this gave you peace, because death is not something to be afraid of. It's a transition. It is truly beautiful. And I wish I could expel on you my experience when I touch on an animal's soul who's dying, who's transitioning. It is unreal. And if you could feel what I feel, you wouldn't be scared anymore. You wouldn't be dreading it anymore. It is simply a transitioning of the physical. So, Sandra has, do you believe our animals reincarnate and come back to us? Sandra, do me a favor. Go to my Facebook page and you can see last week's. I explained everything about reincarnation that I know of from my experience. So I hope that helps you too. I want to thank everybody for joining. Truly. Those who are joining live, and I know this is interesting time, but I wanted to be able to do a time where I'm hoping more people can do it, and maybe if I need to, I'll make it later, but I want to be able to incorporate people from the other side of the world. I hope that, so that's why I'm doing it. Sandra, I know they have a connection with people on the other side. I prayed that my sister help Missy to cross so she wouldn't be suffer anymore. Within an hour, she was fine. Yes, souls help other souls. Spirits help each other. Absolutely meet each other on the other side. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Animal Experience. I hope that it gave you something that you can use and that's powerful for you. And the next week's episode is a challenging one, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And it's also something that might surprise you. I'm going to be talking and discussing sustenance animals. And it might surprise you what's going to be happening. So if you're interested in a session with me for your animal or or reading for yourself, please go to my website, and that's easy. It's my name, so it's CoryelleKramer.com. Or you can send me an email, shoot me an email at mail@CoryelleKramer.com, or on Facebook, Coryelle Kramer, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. I'm on social media. I'm probably on it. I don't know. I'm not going to mention them all, but I'm pretty much on it. I love you all, guys, too. Thank you all so, so much. For the rest of the people here, the rest of the people who are commenting, if I didn't get you, I promise I will answer it at the end of this show. I just can't see everything. I'm trying to do the best I can with the equipment I got, but, I'm doing what I can do. So I will answer it at the end in the comments, I promise. All right? So Thank you all so much for joining me. I love you. I love your animals. I will see you next week, and I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day.